welcome back to Funeral DNA, the podcast that analyzes the unique components, trends, and innovations that make up the funeral industry, or as we call it, Funeral DNA. I'm Mike Davis.
And I'm Ashley Solomon.
And today we have Tyler Yamasaki on from Parting Pro. So thank you for joining us today, Tyler.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So Tyler, tell us a little bit about yourself and how long have you been in the funeral industry?
Sure. So our company's actually been around for about 6 years now. I had previously not had any experience with the funeral industry or with the profession at all. But I had the passing of my grandmother, when it was the first time I actually experienced the funeral profession or industry for the first time. Coming from a tech background, I thought there would be something a lot easier for me to interact with an industry that serves millions and millions of people every single year. But found that there really was kind of a lacking experience from someone who really, you can really do pretty much anything else on the internet and have resources available. And there was really nothing available that made it super helpful for me. So what we did is we kind of went out and we originally started in the industry with a hotels.com of the funeral industry, trying to build a way for consumers to really find and figure out which funeral home they would want to use. But that ended up having a ton of challenges. We also realized that it's hard to build a hotels.com if let's say Marriott and all the different chains were still on pen and paper or still using fax machines to do booking, right? And so that's kind of one of the biggest challenges that we ran into. Also, the internet consumer is a little bit different than what maybe a traditional funeral home would be willing, that experience that they provide, right? It's just different. It's not better, it's not worse, but expectations are a lot different. So, we kind of actually made a pivot where we kind of dropped the other marketplace type deal, and we actually created Parting Pro with the idea of all the kind of findings that we found from the arrangement side, which was, being able to provide transparent pricing and basically bringing a Amazon-like experience to the funeral industry, but not trying to take over the funeral industry like Amazon did with all retail, more like providing every funeral home their ability to serve families in a online or in a modern way that maybe internet consumers are looking for. And so, 3 or 4 years after we made that change, here we are today, as Parting Pro, helping funeral homes individually to serve their communities better.
So would you be able to briefly summarize sort of what Parting Pro is as a company, how it functions, and some of the main services that you are able to offer funeral homes?
Sure. So Parting Pro in its core is really an online arrangement platform that can plug into any funeral home's website. So imagine that you're a family that just lost someone. You can actually go online, go to find the funeral home's website, and from the website you can still call, but you can also actually choose your services, choose your merchandise, choose additional services, death certificates, all of that, and actually pay for that service just from the website. Never actually even having to step into the funeral home if you don't want to. Obviously, it can work as a hybrid as well if you want to call and get directions, all that stuff. On the back end, we do have tools for the funeral director as well, which provide digital signatures, keeping track of what's going on with all the cases, invoicing, and all the different tools that you would need for a case management system. But the core of our business is actually the online arrangement platform that helps sell, burials, cremations, and all different types of services for the funeral home.
So then what would be the benefits then that the funeral home receives from partnering up with Parting Pro?
Yeah, so besides all the obvious efficiency tools that you get with bringing a technology solution into your business, the main point you'll see is we actually do see not only an increase in the amount of people that will actually, so families will actually go to a website, never contact the funeral home, and actually transact and complete an arrangement online. So you will see that happen in funeral homes. So one, you're getting business without even having to pick up the phone. That's a big one. What we also see too, though, is these arrangements actually increase in size because of the way we display merchandise, the way we, we have a very structured sales process in the way that the the family will go through the checkout. And so what you end up seeing is like funeral homes are starting to sell more urns, or starting to sell more merchandise and keepsakes, because there's a very structured sales process. Whereas, certain funeral directors in your funeral home may sell more, and then some may sell less, and right, it's not always the same process. But because we are giving the family or consumer a easy way to do it in a way that they're comfortable with, I'm sure everyone knows how to buy things on like Amazon or the websites, right? So by providing that experience, we are seeing not only more customers, but higher dollar values per each customer. And then obviously on the back end, there's the efficiency tools that you'll find, but those aren't as fun to talk about.
I guess it's sort of in the industry itself, some directors, they feel it's almost taboo to try and push services or to push other items on families because, the whole making a dollar off of this death. But clearly there are services, there are products, there are keepsakes that are out there. So with your online service, it's nicely displayed for everybody, and you're taking away that human impact of whether or not they're going to present something or not present something to the family, and you're presenting them with all the options. Do you guys have partnerships with your own with your own companies for keepsakes and monuments, or do you just utilize what the funeral home already has in place and just utilize them on your site?
No, so we've started to build partnerships where we'll help with inventory tracking. I mean, we do have a lot of data, so we know kind of what sells better, what sells worse, what pricing points you should kind of set merchandise at and stuff like that. But we do not force anything upon a funeral home. If a funeral home works with us and we partner together, we're going to allow them to put all their own services, all their own merchandise, all their own keepsakes and memorial items and whatever they want. We're not, we're kind of like a blank, customizable arrangement experience that's tailored towards the funeral home experience that they want to provide. We don't try to push anything on them, but we do have a few integrations with a few partners that will make it easier, like them not having to have, like the funeral home not having to have and worry about inventory and stuff like that. But for the most part, you bring whatever you want, you bring your own pricing. We don't care technically. We'll make suggestions, but we don't care what they want to sell, right?
So how do you find these partnerships with funeral homes? Do you find them? Do they reach out to you? And have there been like some obstacles in sort of communicating all the benefits that you can get these funeral homes?
Yeah, so it's been a mix. We do outbound, like we do have sales team, but for the most part, a lot of our sales or partnerships come by way of word of mouth referrals. A big portion of new customers that we get is actually like competitors going to their competitors' websites and seeing us on there, and then they'll contact us and talk about it. So we actually, I don't know if you consider that word of mouth, but it's kind of like a competitor word of mouth type of thing. So we get a lot of that, but we do have marketing and sales that will provide demos and all that stuff.
So the video that you guys share, the one I saw up on your website, it talks about changes and how all industries have, sort of been changing, and now it's time for the funeral industry to start to change. So what changes have you noticed are happening?
Yeah, so when we first launched this product, which was for maybe almost 5 years ago, there was a lot of pushback in saying like, oh, by bringing this technology, you're cheapening the experience, you're taking out the family experience, like you're making it very transactional. And while some of that I could say is partially true, we're not trying to build a replacement like kiosk in a funeral home where you just come in and type things in, right? Well, our product still is very much a tool for the funeral director to use. They still want to build that connection. When we first came out, there was a lot of pushback from maybe like the older generations or the older owners who just don't understand it. But I think over the past 5 years, we've really seen a big change in not only the consumer expectations, but we could probably talk about COVID too, having a huge impact on the need for having online capabilities for your business, right? It was a huge change that came that really forced the hand of funeral directors and the funeral industry as a whole to really adapt.
Yeah, so it's an industry that doesn't like change or doesn't take well to change, as we know working in there. But this year, COVID obviously has forced a lot of people to change. Something that you brought up, 4 or 5 years ago, Zoom arrangements and Zoom funerals, likely would have been very few and far between that were offering that service back then. But now it seems like, everybody's offering that, and it's probably something that's gonna stay. So you think you can contribute COVID-19 to actually being a benefit thing for your company, where it was able to force that change into a few of the funeral homes?
Yeah, I mean, we never like to just like be happy or, say COVID-19 had positive change, but we did see that, we were always trying to be innovative and build a little bit in the future. And I would say that with COVID, it pushed the industry forward overnight, like 5 years into the future, maybe even 10, right? Like there was really no option for having these large gatherings, meeting everybody in person for, the most mundane things, getting in vitals or something like that. And so everyone was forced to really adapt. And I think after this whole year and a half of this pandemic, I don't think it's going to go back to where it was before. It may crawl back a little bit, but I think everything's been pushed forward. We've seen it. We've seen our customers, our current customers, we've seen their businesses take off. We've seen them using it more. We've seen a demand for new customers needing and feeling that change. So yeah, I don't think it's going to go back anywhere close to where it was. And I think we're kind of all in the future now, for better or worse.
Fair enough. So, we lightly talked and joked about the slight benefit it has of pushing us forward and, making that step of evolution. But obviously COVID-19 did have some negative impacts to most businesses or industries. Did it have any impact with you guys with whether or not it was connecting with the funeral homes to getting them on board with your services, or how you offer your services to clients, any of your supply chains? Did it have an effect on you guys that way?
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of what we saw is like we allow our funeral homes to put their own merchandise and stuff. We saw them having to change their merchandise constantly because I know there were crazy supply chain issues from all the urn manufacturers across the board getting all the shipments in from, I think it's India, right? We also saw gatherings smaller, so I think the revenue from each case went down because people weren't able to have those large gatherings. People were opting more for these simple services and maybe pushing them off till later. So we did see some of that have negative impacts for our customers. We do serve a lot of cremation societies though, so we saw a huge increase in that. But we also know that by seeing a huge increase in the cremation societies, you're also seeing less in maybe some of the more traditional higher end funeral homes as well. So it definitely was a shift, and definitely had big implications towards the industry, which we're very aware of. So yeah, I mean, it's hard to say exactly where it's going to end up, but I definitely think that there is going to be a shift, and there's definitely a permanent change that has happened.
And I like the idea that you brought up where you're not, you don't want to be a sort of a kiosk that they stop by and take away from that in-person setting. But clearly when things open back up, there are going to be those two types of customers that are, the kind that want to go in for that in-person sit down experience, walk me through it. And there's always going to be those people that want to sit at home, you're right, pull up their laptop, pull up their smartphone and do everything from the comfort of their own house. And I don't think you're competing there, right? By being able to offer that online service, you're extending to more customers that maybe they never would have been able to reach before.
Yeah, I mean, that's why our Parting Pro, that's like a part of it, but we do build tools that are meant to be tools no matter what type of customer is, right? So even if the customer is a customer coming in, you still do all your paperwork, and within Parting Pro, you can still invoice, right? There's no need to have to collect a check or an invoice immediately at the time of arrangement or something like that. So we do build tools that allow them to serve families both online and off. But yeah, I would agree with what you're saying.
So if you could leave the audience or funeral directors, funeral owners with any little tidbit of information on how you could benefit them, their business, or why they should partner with you, what would that be?
Sure. So really our mission is to try to create the best death care experience and to be able for funeral homes to provide their families with a modern experience. And what modern means, it could mean all online. It could be a mix of online and offline. It could be just however the family wants to be served, right? And so we're just helping funeral homes meet families where they want to be met. That could be online, it could be off, it could be all together. And so we're just trying to make that experience as easy for the family as possible. Not trying to take over or cut out the funeral home whatsoever. We're trying to just provide them with the tools to allow them to provide that experience to the families.
And how many funeral homes, sorry, are you affiliated with now?
Probably close to 300 now or so. Yeah, we do, 3,000 or 4,000 arrangements a month, collectively. I think total we've seen over 100,000 arrangements made through our system, through all of our partners. So
Are they all in your sort of area in California area and Western? Or are they across the board all the way?
no, they're pretty much across the United States. I think we're in 40, 45-ish, 48 states or so. I don't think we're in Hawaii yet, but I mean, we are like in Alaska and most of them. So, most of the major cities we do have at least one customer in all the major cities. So.
Okay, well, perfect. Thank you so much for stopping in, Tyler. We really appreciate you sharing a little bit of your company with us. So yeah, thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And for the listeners at home, thank you once again for tuning in to Funeral DNA, the podcast where we analyze the unique components, trends, and innovations that make up the funeral industry, or as we call it, Funeral DNA. Stay tuned next week where we bring up another interesting topic. Thank you.